All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. We are very excited to share our Farm to School Youth Leadership Curriculum with you all. Today, this is part one of a two-part series of webinars on the curriculum that we're going to be doing. So thanks so much for joining us. All right, and before we get started, I just want to draw your attention to the GoToWebinar control panel here. And just let you all know that you're able to ask questions of our presenters during the webinar by typing them into the text box that's located in that panel there. And then you can select the send button. So at the end we're going to have some time for Q&A and we're going to get to as many questions as time allows. So send those throughout and then we'll get to you at the end. I also want to let you know if you have problems with your sound or anything, it's possible to switch the audio to the telephone, so just be aware of that. You'll see in that control panel there's a little telephone box and it'll give you instructions there if you need to do that. And then also I wanted to let you know that we're recording the webinar today, so afterwards it's going to be available on our website and also on our YouTube page, and we'll send you a link to that to all the registrants afterwards. All right. So today, this is the first part of a two-part webinar series. We're going to be introducing you to our high school level Farm to School Youth Leadership Curriculum. And this curriculum, we're super excited to share it with you all. We designed it to empower youth, to teach them about their local food system. We wanted to engage them in meaningful hands-on learning activities, but also those same activities work to strengthen their school's Farm to School program, and it connects them directly with farmers in their community. When you do this curriculum in a high school setting, you not only are bolstering your own Farm to School program at your school, but you're also giving your students ownership and commitment to that program. And at the same time, it's reducing the amount of work and the research that's required of the teachers or the food service staff that work to establish or expand a Farm to School initiative. So we like to think that it's a really elegant solution that's taking some of the work off of the backs of the school food service or teachers, but also giving at the same time with that work an opportunity for the students to learn. So we're really excited to share this model with you. And in today's webinar, we have a bunch of great speakers lined up for this series. I'm really excited that Natasha Mortenson is here with us today. She is a high school ag teacher in Morris, and she's also an FFA advisor. She's super famous in the ag ed community, both in our state and nationally, and she worked with us to co-develop the curriculum. She was the one who started doing these types of activities with her own students, and they were very successful, and we were so excited by this innovative model that we worked with her to capture what she's been doing into a formal curriculum that the rest of you can also use. And we're also joined today by Mary Jo Forbord, and she is a wonderful farmer from Prairie Horizons farm. She's also a registered dietitian and Morris Healthy Eating Coordinator. So we have great information for you all today. And then this is Erin. I work at IATP. I'm the Farm to Institution Senior Program Associate. And I also worked on developing the curriculum. So we will be having another webinar next week on Tuesday, just so you know. The other co-developer of the curriculum, Vanessa Harold, will be joining us there, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the webinar today. So today's webinar is more giving you background on Farm to School and the benefits and sharing Natasha and Mary Jo's experience. And then next week we're going to be talking more about the details of implementation and kind of helping you build a plan of how to either start or expand a program at your own school. So first of all, in our curriculum, these are the lessons that you'll see in our curriculum. And you can see they kind of follow a logical flow. And we developed this curriculum. It was about 2 years ago that we were working on this with both Natasha Mortenson and Vanessa Harold. We also got a lot of input, probably from people that are on the line today, because we had so many partners and stakeholders who gave their feedback. This curriculum is available to download for free from our website. So you can download that as soon as our webinar is over today. So just keep that in mind. So before we launch into our presenters, I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page about what Farm to School is. The basic premise of Farm to School is that we're trying to make a connection between students and nearby small and mid-sized farms. And we want to put the fresh, healthy, and minimally processed foods in their school meals and also teach them more about where that food came from. So one important thing is to realize is that it's not just about serving the foods in the school meals, but there's also a lot of educational activities and opportunities in the classroom that can make your farm to school program stronger. And our curriculum is working firstly on that educational level with activities in the classroom. But the innovative idea of this program is that we're also connecting the students' projects that they're doing in school to supporting sourcing local food. So they do that research, they do the legwork, and they support their school food service. And there are also activities of gardening, community activities, and promotion of the program to support a program, a farm to school program in your school that go along with the curriculum. So our curriculum supports all of the different aspects that farm to school programming can take. And a lucky thing for me is that Farm to School is basically good for everybody involved. We know that it's good for kids, it's good for farmers, it's good for the community. We like to say that it's a win-win-win. So I am lucky to work on something that's pretty popular with everybody. All right. So now that we have a little bit of background on Farm to School in general, I'm going to pass it over to Natasha to give a little bit of her background actually using these types of activities in her classroom.
All right, let me make sure you can all see my screen. Did that go over good?
Yep.
Great. My name is Natasha Mortenson, and I am the agriculture teacher at the Morris Area High School. And I am over in western Minnesota, where it's very flat. And I got really interested in doing more with farm to school, mostly because I have a lot of students from really large production, and it's pretty difficult for students to just want to be a farmer unless they are going to inherit a farm. And most of the farming that's done around here is very large cash crop and very large livestock production. So to me, the kids have a very one-sided view of agriculture. Because of that, and I wanted them to really understand that there is so many players in food and that they're not seeing the big picture. And because of that, I wanted to introduce something to them where they could really see what local food is and how can it affect them at the school we're in every day, and how we can have a hands-on experience with that in lots of different ways. I have been teaching for 14 years, and I've been doing farm to school in my classroom for probably 5 or 6, I suppose. And it's really evolved into a pretty awesome project here that the kids are really, really proud of. And not only did we find a way to teach them about local foods, but we've tied in egg communications and leadership development as part of our curriculum here at Morris. Through this experience, we've created young leaders, and my proudest thing is that they're young leaders not just from the standpoint of agriculture, but they're young leaders on the standpoint of all of agriculture. So they are able to promote and understand how the small farmers can be really into the food, the foodie world, and that anybody can find a way to be a part of agriculture. If they have 2 acres of land or if they have 10,000 acres of land, there is a way for everybody to still make a living or a partial living off of the land. So in this picture, you see some FFA students. I am the FFA advisor as well as the egg teacher in Morris. And this is actually a picture at the state FFA convention, and my students ran a workshop with other students from Minnesota with Aaron, and they're really proud of the program that we've developed here, and I'm really proud that they are able to go and teach others how they can go about doing that. And we've done some other workshops as well. Aaron and I have done some other workshops as well to really show that students do become owners of this. And not only do they become owners of understanding the agriculture food system, but they become leaders in the school, actually developing the farm to school program within the school, working with the cooks, working with the local farmers. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go here, but that's what the curriculum is about. It brings you step by step through lessons that will actually allow your students to do this in their school districts. So it strengthens farm and food literacy, and I'm going to talk through a little bit of the curriculum here, just so you can kind of understand the background of it. But there are a lot of different pieces to this. So the very first lesson is going to be that getting to know farm to school. So what do you need to know about the system? How is it different than just the regular, normal wholesale food system? And how can you go about growing local things, and how do you market it? How could you work with farmers markets, and how do you work with how do you work with the farmers, and where are they that actually are the smaller producers that you can get vegetables and fruits from? So we learn a lot about the local food system, which is lesson 2, and that's obviously going to be very dependent on your area, but we use the online directories for local foods. We use the Minnesota Grown magazine and website. So there's a lot of things in every state that are available for you to find these producers of this food. Then the kids have to learn about school lunch. What are the rules? So we have the head food service director come into class, and she actually goes through the rules. So carrots have to be cut at what length above the top of the carrot, and how much washing can be done for vegetables, because when we're securing food and foraging for food, the students have to be able to intelligently talk to the producers. So they actually have to do some research, and they have to put together some of those limitations that they may have for certain types of products, whether that's meat or whether that's vegetables or fruits. And we do all of them here in Morris. Then the students actually create a farm to school plan. So they decide, we do surveys in classrooms. We maybe do taste testing through the food service department to see what kinds of things they would like to see in the cafeteria. And through that we create a plan. The students decide, all right, we're going to forage for the following foods. They make some lists of producers within a 60-mile radius that they can get the food from, and then they'll contact them actually by phone and or email, and they actually get to the point of where they have made good contact and they have said, yes, we can supply you with that much of said meat or vegetable or fruit. And from there they don't do any of the contracting. The food service department does that, but we just forward on that information to our director. And then the students' work isn't done. They also do the communications, and I'm going to take one step back here. When communicating with producers, there's a lesson on how to teach your kids how to communicate. And we play telephone, we do in front of the classroom conversations where they have to pretend they're actually having the conversation with the producer. Don't ever assume your students know how to talk on the phone. These days especially, it seems like it's very hard for them to actually talk on the phone to a real person and not text or email information. So we spend a lot of time writing scripts and practicing them so that they feel confident when they're calling. What do they do when they get an answering machine? What do they do when they get kind of a cranky person on the other end? There's a lot of things that they have to be able to deal with. Okay, so the last piece is promotion, which can be a really fun part of the program. So the students can work on helping with the menus. They can work on celebrating Farm to School month in September. They can put a whiteboard up in the cafeteria where the students can actually see where the Farm to School food came from that day. You could have them all up for the week. So there's a lot of promotion that can happen. You can have little things stuck in the food service, little flags that say this is a Farm to School product, so that they can see that. Our school also has a garden, which is an acre large plus greenhouse, and we have 6 raised beds where we grow our own vegetables. And we have some fruits as well that we just started last summer, and all that food goes to the food service. So our students are also growing the food that is going into the food service department, and it's fun to be able to label that as well, that it's student grown food, and the cooks then took that and froze some or did some fresh. So that's pretty fun to be able to promote that. And the kids really get into the promotion piece and the aid communications piece of the food service department. Academic benefits. There are a ton of academic benefits, and if you haven't kind of decided that there are yet by listening to just the curriculum and how it's laid out, let me assure you that the impact of this project on students is extraordinary. Not only do they learn about a whole different segment of agriculture, especially for rural students from very large production areas, I would say even for urban students that don't see the urban agriculture side of things, that they see that they can grow things in their backyard, on their porch, on a rooftop. They see that they can do these things by having these experiences in class. But it really does open their eyes to the world of food. Most students don't think about their food out here. Some people maybe think about it more than others do that don't have access to fresh food. But this really provides an eye-opening experience to see what agriculture really is, because it isn't just large farms. It is also very small farmers that are producing fruits and vegetables and meat for these types of situations. In our local greenhouse, our students start all our plants that go into our greenhouse, and they also get that academic achievement as far as understanding plant systems and understanding how to grow a garden and how to take care of a plant and how to harvest vegetables. You know, when do you do it? How do you store vegetables? So that they really learn the whole gamut of all of these things. And I have multiple classes working on this. This isn't just one class, but it could definitely be something where all you grow is lettuce as students. It could be all you grow is tomatoes. You have a hydroponic system maybe in your classroom. So it doesn't have to be as big as an acre garden and all of what we have, but there's so many different ways and levels that you can use this curriculum to really be able to find a lot of academic benefit to your students. Now, do you want to do questions, Erin, or are we going to just wait till the end?
I think we'll wait till the end, but if people have questions that have come up while they're listening to Natasha talk about implementing the curriculum, please, you can go ahead and start typing them in, and then we'll collect them, and then we'll have time when all of us can answer questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay, I just have a little bit more here that I will chat through, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
And we'll hand it over to Mary Jo. I really want people to understand that there's a lot of grant dollars out there to help you fund a garden project, and whether that's a community garden or at a school. We get a lot of funding through SHIP grants to do our projects, as well as through the FFA organization, but I know there's a lot of possible grant dollars out there to do these things. The curriculum is provided for you on the IATP website, and it is complete. The one thing that we wanted to make sure we did when we developed this curriculum was to make it so you don't have to do all the lessons. So if you just want to do 2 of them, you can just do 2 of them. They do not need each other to function as a curriculum. You can pick and choose what you want to do out of them, and it makes sense to do so. I know that everybody is coming from a very different type of situation, a different part of the country perhaps, an urban area versus a rural area, and that really can make it a lot easier to implement. Through the curriculum, which I know Vanessa will talk more about, there are assignments ready for you. There's tons of online videos you could like certainly show with these things, but in order to empower students, you have to create a way for them to have ownership, and this project is a really great one. If you don't have a garden in the greenhouse, you don't need one. The students can still forage for food and make the connections with the cooks and make a connection with local producers. My students really love to talk to the local farmers. They're scared to death when they first do it, and it shows them that they can, in fact, learn about something new. They can talk intelligently about it to other people. They can work with the local newspaper, the radio, the administration in the school, and they can make a difference in their school just by a small project like this. And again, there's so many levels that you can do. You can choose to stay really small, or you can, do tons of different fruits and vegetables. But maybe your goal is to do one thing a month. That's how we started. We did one thing a month, apples 1 month, green beans 1 month, and that's all we did right away. And then we were able to expand from there. So you can really start small. But I'll be done. I'll hand it over to Mary Jo, and then be available for questions after.
Great, thank you, Natasha. And I do want to mention too that as you saw, I presented with Natasha and her students, so I've met her students, and they are really truly impressive. They really have a lot of leadership, and you can see it in just the way they carry themselves. They feel like experts because they have actually been the ones that have implemented the project. So I think just seeing those kids, you can feel the impact just in the way that they carry themselves. So thank you so much, Natasha. And now we're going to hand it over to Mary Jo to share her experience with you all as well.
Thank you, Erin and Natasha. Can everyone hear okay?
Yep.
If so, I'm going right ahead. And if you aren't inspired after hearing Natasha and all of the benefits of working with Farm to School, all of its many components, all of the advantages that are apparent with the academic, the various directions that we can go, hopefully by the end of our time today, you will be inspired. I'll tell you just a little bit about myself first. I am a fifth-generation Minnesota farmer. My ancestors, all of them, came over in the 1800s to farm, and farming never stands still. Farming is always evolving, and Farm to School gives a great kind of future focus to what can happen with agriculture. Along with being a farmer, I'm a registered dietitian. And looking back on my career, there was a time when I really didn't see the connection between the farm and the food that we were producing on the farm and my profession as a registered dietitian, because the area of nutrition had become so clinical and so disease-oriented that there was talk about keeping people healthy and wellness programs and that sort of thing, but it was on a very, very slow simmer. And it really wasn't until after college, after I graduated from the University of Minnesota and did an internship, a dietetic internship in New Orleans, Louisiana, that I really came across what could happen in farm to school programs. Way back then in Louisiana, one of the most unlikely places perhaps where you'd think that there would be just a vibrant farm to school program, lo and behold there was. There were nutritionists working with cooks, farmers were coming into the kitchen, students were helping to prepare vegetables, they were doing adventuresome tastings, which is always great, peer pressure. If kids haven't seen a vegetable before, they're going to be leery of it. But if one ventures out and tries it, it quickly becomes the norm. So fast forward a couple of decades, and I'm now based at the University of Minnesota Morris. And even though the students that I work with aren't in the K-12 farm to school era, I do have a bird's eye view on what happens after K-12. And what I see among the college students of today is a high level of interest in the food system. They want to know about their food system, and they don't know as much as they wish they did. They want transparency. They want hands-on. As Natasha's students are growing gardens and learning everything from the production end, both hands-on and talking with farmers, so it is as our public College of Liberal Arts here at the University of Minnesota Morris. Students come and 60% have never put a seed in the ground. These are students who self-select to be gardeners. But they really view the food system as so important, not only for their personal health, but the health of the environment, for food security and actually national security. So I come at Farm to School from a bunch of different angles, and probably about 6 years ago, I had nearly an out-of-body experience. And that out-of-body experience was delivering food from our farm to the high school that I graduated from. And I really didn't think that could happen, because for the previous 10 to 20 years, we were very disconnected from our food. We sort of viewed it almost as progress to not have to think about food, that it was just sort of magically there, ready in an instant, and you really didn't have to think much about it. But we've also discovered that there's probably some downsides to that. And some of the downsides are when your food comes from somewhere else, you lack all of the knowledge and understanding of what it takes to feed your community or a population or the world. One of the things I think all students are amazed with, and here at the university it's really no different. We grow a small garden, but that may be eaten up in an hour and a half during one meal at food service. And so the volumes of food that are needed to feed hundreds of people at a time is a big essential learning for people. And that also means a lot of dollars. Dollars either in and circulating in the local economy or sent out really never to be seen again, exported as raw commodities that come back to us, perhaps processed somewhere else, perhaps too heavily processed. And it really hurts our rural communities to send that very reliable source of income that farmers, our local farmers, could be gaining in a sort of a win-win relationship, which farm to school certainly is economically and in a lot of other ways. There's some statistics that show that, you know, a dollar spent locally on local food will circulate three times or so within the local community. And when we're talking about economic development, we have up to this point outsourced our food. We pretty much import all of it back in to our rural communities, right in the epicenter of where we could be growing food. And that leaves a lot of opportunity to build capacity. Capacity in production and processing, food distribution, things like the new food hubs that are springing up across our state. We've talked about that sort of thing as being needed for perhaps the last 20 years, but here they are on the ground and in many different forms, and really causing a new groundswell of what is available for institutions, and not just schools, but hospitals. And recent statistics that I've seen show that we have a lot of area for growth in Minnesota. In fact, in the metro areas of our state, primarily Minneapolis and St. Paul, there's more food going into school districts and institutions than there are in outstate. So we may be a couple years behind in greater Minnesota, but we have more room for growth, and we hope to be doing just that. So a lot of capacity to support our farmers and for them to support us, and also to grow in many different ways for economic development. When we talk about, you know, how that all happens, the strong community ties that we can have that really reverse some of the what I would consider unhealthy trends of being disconnected and maybe too far specialized in what we know and what we do about the food system. I think the connections that we can make in our community are really essential to unleashing the creativity. And when we unleash creativity, great things happen. I've seen this happen with cooks that have a great amount of knowledge, and maybe they weren't really allowed to use that knowledge, or they didn't have the equipment, or the budget was so tight, or the ways were so set that the food always had to come in pre-prepared, pre-processed, and you really never our cooks the freedom and the kind of connection that can occur when they're working with students, when the roles that they have are respected and valued, that the food that we eat, the people who grow it, the people who prepare it, are really valued to the great degree that they should be in our communities. So I think when we heard from Natasha and all of the things that she's inspiring her students to do, as adults and food service professionals or anyone involved in the school food system, from parents, you know, there's this creativity factor that I just love. It comes out in farm to school when we start making those connections that we haven't made before. And when we do that, we really have an incredible ignition, and it propels us forward. Our positive successes pretty much feed future successes. What happens then when we can actually, let's say, taste the food instead of just talk about it, it leads to something, this term physical environment change, that doesn't probably resonate as being a really exciting thing. But if you think about, let's say, for instance, what I did with nutrition prior to coming to the university, or let's say working within healthcare, it was a lot about personal prescription and, this is what you have to do to improve your health, and not a lot about how as a community can we join together and use all of our assets and resources to become a healthier place. And it was a lot of talk and probably not as much action. Well, community ties, you get a lot of action. We all know how kids like to use their whole bodies in learning. They like to use their hands and engage their brains. And that's really part of what Farm to School is. It's much more than getting local food and fresh food, healthy food on a student's table. It's that knowledge and that connection and that full body experience in learning, and really realizing what great resources we have in the community. It's a great process of discovery to really put things together in that way. And this is probably really near and dear to my heart, for sure, is how we can really improve nutrition. When I was an undergrad in dietetics and we were studying, let's say, the disease of diabetes, type 1 diabetes, yes, that was known to be prevalent, or not as prevalent as it is today, but in young people. Type 2 at that time, the obesity-linked diabetes, was known as adult onset diabetes, and for good reason. At that time, it didn't occur in children. I think one of the most sobering statistics that I have heard just recently is that 45% of new type 2 diabetics are children. If that doesn't give us pause to think about what we are doing and what we need to do to invest in our young people, in what they can give our young people the highest priority, they are worth our investment. And I think it's one of the reasons why Farm to School has been so successful, is we all care about the next generation. And we may have whatever differences among us as adults, but when it comes to our children and the next generation, we will rally around our students and do the right thing. Farm to School, in my estimation, is a great step forward, many steps forward, in actually doing the right thing. Everything from the brain development of young children, which we need nourishment. We need really high-class, high-quality nourishment. I think, we've talked about how important it is for kids to develop cognitively from a very young age. Sometimes I wonder if we don't give enough attention to how brains need to develop in order to really cause that cognitive development to happen. Improved nutrition, when we think about there's 31 million school children that benefit from at least one school meal a day, and 50% of those meals are free or reduced school lunch. We can see that this is an opportunity for us as a society and as a country to really boost all children regardless of income levels. And when we think about what comes first with Farm to School, what types of foods, we know that food service directors, 78% of those who are using the Farm to School approach, they're buying fruits, and 75% are buying vegetables. 37% are buying fluid milk, which leaves future growth in the areas of proteins, plant-based proteins in the area of meat and eggs and grains and flours. All of this should cause us to really band together to have just a really enjoyable and productive time putting together our own Farm to School programs to create a culture of good health in all of our communities with good food at the center. Thank you.
Wow, Mary Jo, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your experience. And I just want to point out some of the words that you were using while you were presenting, just valuing creativity, discovery, learning, meaning. I feel like that's so important in these programs. I did also want to point out the last little benefit. So this has all been about the different benefits that these programs can have with your communities and your kids and your farmers. Another thing that's near and dear to my heart is the access to healthy foods. And one thing that I really love about localized and decentralized food systems is that it's giving the control of that food system to the people who are actually participating and eating that food. And we know that a lot of kids, when you're talking about the increased nutrition that Mary Jo was just talking about, especially for lower income communities, many of them are very dependent on these school food programs for their primary nutrition source. So to have the most healthy, most nutritious food is so important for those communities especially, but also for everybody. And that if we're working with local farmers, we have relationships with them, we know that we can ask them what their growing methods are, we can ask them who they employ, if they use chemicals, where they're located. There's a relationship there. So it's very different than when you're communicating with a big company that you can't have a personal relationship with the people who are growing your food. So that local control is something that's really important, and that transparency that I also wanted to highlight here. So thank you both for your wonderful perspective, and I did want to point out to all of those who are on the line here that Farm to School has just been growing in leaps and bounds around the country, and this is a statistic on your slide in front of you here. This is from the USDA Farm to School Census, which they did in 2012, and you can see there's 23.5 million kids who are participating in farm to school initiatives around the country. That's a lot of kids. So maybe some of you have already started doing these programs. Maybe you're interested in getting started, and I'm really glad that you could join us today if that's the case. And they're going to be doing a new census in the upcoming year, so we're going to find out even more information. But at least in Minnesota, where I'm located, where we're located, it looks, when we've been doing our own surveys in our own state, it's been growing every single year ever since they started doing the polls. So that's really wonderful. And now we're going to go through those questions, and we're going to ask the different presenters, and I can answer some things too, what they think. So let's see, the first question that I saw on our list here, Natasha, I think this question was mostly directed towards you. Somebody was wondering what classes are involved in doing the curriculum and how much time the students spend per semester working on farm to school projects.
In my classroom, which you could do it a lot of different ways, I use my agriculture communications and leadership students and my ag management course. Those two are they're two different semester courses. One's in the fall and one's in the spring. They do a lot of the foraging and the communications and all of that part of our program. And then my horticulture students, along with my 8th grade block class, do the growing and the greenhouse work. So it's two different hours of the day, some year-wide. And that's who does it. Now, as far as the hours go, obviously the garden and the greenhouse work, that's numerous hours. As far as delivering the curriculum and doing all of it, that's all 6 lessons, I would say we probably spend a good 4 to 6 weeks Depending on the year, depending on what they want to do and the initiatives they want to do, the communication stuff can take less or more time depending on what you do with that. If you want to make a really big lesson out of it, if you want the students to teach elementary kids about things, that adds on. If you don't do that, it takes off. But I would say in 4 weeks you could get through a majority of it.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to point out that when we developed the curriculum, we also had it aligned to both national and also Minnesota educational standards. So for every chapter of the curriculum, there's a little section where you can see which educational standards it meets. And you know, that could apply to a science class, it could apply to a social studies class. It doesn't have to just be a specifically agriculture education class where you're doing this. You can pick and choose different sections, and that goes along with what Natasha was saying earlier, that you don't have to feel beholden to doing the entire curriculum exactly as it's written there. You can also choose if there are certain parts that are more relevant to your class. Let me see here. So one person was asking, they say that they're newly appointed as a farm to school coordinator, and they're wondering if we have recommendations that they can get teachers to use the curriculum in their own schedules. As a non-teacher, how do they engage with teachers? So Natasha, I think that would probably be you again.
So clarify the question a little bit, Erin. I can't see it, but
oh, sure. So this person is not a teacher. They're a farm to school coordinator.
Yep.
And they're wondering, how do they get the teachers to use the lessons in their classes? And actually, a related question, somebody else asked for suggestions about how to convince a resistant school administration to participate in this type of program. And those might kind of go together. They might be a little bit different.
Sure. Now, I mean, that's always tough, and I work at a school, so I get that. I would say that not only, the really awesome part about this curriculum is that it not only teaches a really, really important thing, which is food. 100% of the people in every single school district eat food. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're in an urban area, there needs to be a heightened educational initiative to teach urban students how they can secure their own food and grow their own food, as well as make proper choices and how their food got there. Rural areas need it too. I'm not going to single out urban areas, but for an urban school, I would say you have a definite benefit, because kids need to know this stuff, and they don't have egg programs. There's very, very little number of agriculture education programs in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and in the suburbs surrounding it. So to get people, administration on board, there needs to just be some data there, and if you need some help with that, I don't know if people can find me, but I'm in the curriculum, so you can find me that way. Google my name and find my email and send me an email, because I'll help you get that done. But the administration, I'd say, if you tell them, you know, we're not only going to teach kids about food security and about food, but we're also going to teach them how to be leaders and how to gain communication skills. And that all in one curriculum is really hard to find. You're covering math standards, you're covering science standards, you're covering social studies standards. There's a whole bunch of things that are being covered by one curriculum. And the kids actually really like it because they have ownership in it. Mm-hmm. As far as teachers go, the curriculum is so well laid out that if you just chose lesson number 1 and you just went to a few teachers or went to one grade and just try to implement in one grade in a school district and say, this is a lesson, you're going to go over it with them, show them how to do it, and just start there. Just try that. And then you say, if you want more, you let me know. Then the next year you go and say, all right, let's add the second lesson. It may be a really slow process, but that's how you get people interested. If you throw all 6 lessons at them and think that they're going to do that, a lot of teachers are going to turn you off. But if you show them one lesson and say this will take you 3 days to do, which that first lesson can be pretty short, can use for any grade, that will definitely kind of get you a head start than just dumping a bunch of stuff on teachers, because they don't really dig that.
Mm-hmm. I would also say to those of you who have questions like that that are really about implementation, the next slide is going to show you the information for next week's webinar with Vanessa Harold, the lovely Vanessa Harold, and we are going to be talking more about the implementation and kind of steps to getting the program going at your school. So I would recommend that you try to attend next week, and I think we're going to be getting into more of those kind of details in that webinar. Mary Jo, I think I have a question that would be good for you. So somebody asked here, do non-GMO products take precedent over GMO products when making decisions about food purchasing and also when educating the students about food, and why is this difference of great concern? And then a related question, somebody else was asking about the distinction being made between conventional products and organic products, and it would be great to hear your perspective as a farmer about those questions.
Thank you. Those are big, important questions today, and it depends on your situation, but I can say that for food security in general, what has happened in rural places and in farm country is that we're growing far too few crops to be healthy for our communities or our personal health. So those crops tend to be crops that are exported or ones that need to be highly processed, and they are corn and soy. So the land use that is devoted to those would largely be involved with GMO products. There are not all the answers in about GMO products, but I think that farm to school with the local control, the ability to set your own policies, to have greater transparencies, to have our young people look into the important issues about our food is absolutely essential, because young people can have a great influence on what happens to their food supply. They've heard the dire statistics that they're going to be the first generation that's not going to be as healthy or live as long as their parents, and they are up for that challenge. They know that good nutrition means that we grow a greater diversity of foods, that we're very aware of what goes on those foods, that we know how those foods are raised, and can make our decisions accordingly. So I view that as phase 2 of Farm to School, where we really have a heightened transparency about how the foods are raised and where, and to be able to match that with what we are willing to pay. There's a quote that I like. It's simply speed, price, quality, pick 2. And for our food system, we just can't afford to just pick speed and low price. We have to take a look at quality and define in our communities what that quality means for us.
That's great. I think actually these questions point out the power of when you're working with local farmers. So I would say in the curriculum there are definitions of these different types of agriculture, GMO or organic. That is in there, and the teachers can teach the kids what these terms mean. But it's really up to your district to decide if you want to, try to get GM crops or organic crops, as it's kind of phase 2, as Mary Jo was saying. But when you're working with a farmer that you know and have a relationship with, you have the opportunity to ask that question to the farmer because you actually know who it is. And when you're working with a giant faceless company, you can't do that. So that's part of the importance of local control and purchasing from people in your community, is that type of question. If that's important to you, then you can definitely pursue that. But it's not going to be possible unless you're purchasing from a local farmer. Natasha, this is a question I would say for you. This person is asking more specifically about how you work with the food service staff so that they know what produce to expect from your program and then that they can do their food orders accordingly. So for example, what happens if you project to have X pounds of Y and then the crop fails or it's much lower yielding than expected? So how do you work together with your food service?
Well, that's a kind. I can kind of answer that, I think. We basically grow a limited number of things. We grow a lot of onions and squash and green beans and tomatoes and potatoes. I'm sure I'm missing something. Peppers. A lot of the things are frozen in the summer when they're ready. But most of the stuff, I mean, as far as large quantity, they know by mid-August into September. So really for us, I don't think really affects them much. Like they can always order in, whatever they need when they need it. But for example, they made pickles, and they almost make it to February or March with pickles. So I mean, they make what they can. They freeze tomatoes whole. They use them all throughout the year. So I don't think it really affects them as far as ordering goes.
And it's built right into the curriculum that you need to include the food service director from the beginning in your planning. And you don't have, the students aren't making contracts or anything with the farmers. So
absolutely not, no.
No. Any orders that are being made through the food service director. With local foods, maybe Mary Jo, the question about crop failure and local foods, that is something that I've heard different people ask about sometimes, and how you accommodate the kind of ebb and flow that might happen with different weather events and things with local foods.
That again can be worked out best locally. There's been perhaps a lot of great templates to tune into the food hubs that are starting to develop across the country and now across Minnesota. Usually what happens is if there is something like a formal contract, in that contract it will say that the farmer, because of crop failures or one thing or another, is not required to supply those goods. So there's an understanding that what we're working with here are the cycles of nature, which can be unpredictable. And you talk about great essential learning for kids to have. The fact that, yes, sometimes the food isn't always there in the quantity or the quality that you want it in. It is tied to natural systems. And what I have seen with some of the food hub agreements is that there's that general understanding, again, different than the larger commodity markets where perhaps if you have a contract there and you don't fulfill it, you're going to buy out that contract. I don't see that happening in farm to school. At least I haven't seen that yet. I expect that contracts and specifications will become increasingly more sophisticated, but that is one of the things that I think needs to be worked out locally.
And usually I would say in what I've seen with farmers and schools, the farmers will know if the product won't be available. They don't just suddenly realize the day that they're supposed to deliver that it's not available. They'll know in advance, and then there would be time for the school to order it, order a replacement local product if that's available, or they could, as a fallback, order something from outside of their local area too. So I think that is something that can be worked around. There's
one caveat on that, hailstorms and sudden rainfall. We've had much more intense rainfall at unpredictable intervals. Those things can happen overnight, as can freezes. So sometimes there's not a lot of advance warning on the farm side. So it is important for food service directors to consider that and to have a backup plan with their regular distributor or somewhere else if they're really, and that's, I think, where food hubs can really come in and aggregate from various sources and really manage that risk.
This is another question, Mary Jo, that I think would be good for you. This person asks, as a farmer, how do I find schools who are participating in farm-to-school programs and they want to invite these schools to their farm for field trips? How would they connect with schools in their area?
You know, I was just looking at the National Farm to School website, and there's a great survey on there of school districts that are self-reporting. I found our state there, and you can go and look up. There's estimates about you know, what kinds of foods those particular school districts are buying and how much and what percentage of their budget. So the National Farm to School website would be one place where you could go and then get back to your local area through that website.
That actually, that leads me to a lot of people have been asking about where we can find the curriculum, and it is available on IATP's website, and we're going to send a follow-up email to all of you who are registered for this, and then we'll send the link to where you can download it. But a couple other people were asking about other resources where they can find more information about how to do these programs, and Mary Jo mentioned the National Farm to School Network's website, and there is a very wonderful section of resources on that website that I really urge you all to check out if you're looking to do a program. And then the curriculum itself, we did a lot of work to gather resources and include them in the curriculum. For every lesson, there's a little resources section that actually will point you to other links and videos. Someone had asked about where they can find the videos that Natasha mentioned about Farm to School, and that's all included right in the curriculum. Natasha, one person did ask about funding opportunities and how you find funding for your programs.
I would do a simple Google search for farm to school or garden grants. I know that depending on where you're located, there are a number of them. I know SHIP dollars in Minnesota have been really integral in our garden project. If you are an ag program, agricultural education program, you can, well, it's not just limited to that. Go to the website. It's called the Minnesota Association, Minnesota Agriculture Education Leadership Council. It's MAELC, M-A-E-L-C. They have grant opportunities not just for ag programs, but for anybody really that's doing anything with agriculture. And if you're in Minnesota, you can access those funds, and they're pretty awesome. Also, the SHIP grants, as I mentioned, but I know there's a lot of garden grants out there. I get emails constantly on garden grants. So if that's what you're looking at doing, great. The Farm to School curriculum from IATP literally costs nothing to use. So that's free. But if you want to do a garden, I know there's lots of things. You just need to Google search it, and you'll get a whole bunch.
And if you all, you're registered, so we'll send out an email to follow up, and I see that we are running out of time here, but if you're able to join us next week, we are going to get more into the details and the nitty-gritty of implementation of these programs, and we're going to have Vanessa Harold on, and she's wonderful. She's a farm to school specialist at the Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems, and she helped us to develop this curriculum, and she knows a lot of resources. So please join next week, and we will have more information for you who are planning to start your own programs or expand ones that you're already doing. But I'd like to thank our presenters, Natasha and Mary Jo. This was just lovely and wonderful, and you did a great job. So much wonderful information. And for all of you on the line, if you want more information, feel free to send questions to me, and we will also send a follow-up email with the link to the curriculum and information about next week's webinar in that as well. So thank you so much for attending, and I hope you can join us next week and that you enjoy the curriculum. Have a great week.
Thank you.